The monitor went flat. The room fell into a thin, unnatural quiet. Rowan Keene already had her hands inside the open chest. Her gloves shone dark with blood. She curled her fingers around a heart that felt slick and warm and stubborn, and she squeezed. Release. Squeeze. Release. A metronome without mercy. Who taught you that technique? Dr. Adrian Pike asked. His voice was steady, but his eyes flicked measuring. Rowan did not look up. The heart pressed back against her palms, not from a book. Outside rain pushed against the hospital windows. The power hummed hard enough to tremble the lamps. Somewhere a tray clicked as metal settled on metal. Rowan felt the rhythm change under her fingers. She kept the count anyway. 72 hours earlier, St. Gabriel Medical Center smelled like bleach and wet stone. New Orleans in late summer clung to the skin. The orientation room was too bright. The air vents hissed. 12 interns shifted in blue scrubs while the projector painted a white rectangle on the wall. Dr. Pike stood at the podium. He wore a fresh white coat and a tie that did not bend when he breathed. He spoke as if the ceiling might be listening. Surgery is not a democracy, he said. You follow protocol. You respect the chain of command. You do not improvise. Rowan sat in the back row. She had her arms crossed. She had a clear view of the exit and the fire map on the wall. Her hair was tucked behind one ear. She pushed it back down when it slipped. He scanned the room. His gaze stopped on her for a half second, then moved on. The projector fan whined. Someone coughed. After the interns filed out in a loose line. Val Cormier, a scrub nurse with hands like rope and a smile that did not show teeth, watched Rowan pull on a jacket. You stitch left-handed or right? Val asked. Both, Rowan said. Val's eyes dipped to the faint scars along Rowan's knuckles. Not the kind you get from a cat, the kind you get from work. Good to know. That afternoon, the OR lights were sharp enough to make the stainless instruments look colder than they were. A routine appendectomy. Rowan was there to observe. She stood near the wall, hands locked at the small of her back. Dr. Pike worked like a textbook. Clean angles, measured pace. His voice listed the steps for the room as if someone were recording. When he closed, he nodded toward a practice pad on the side table. Dr. Keene, show me a simple interrupted stitch. It was not really a request. Rowan stepped up, took the needle driver, and threaded suture without looking up. Her hands moved in a quiet rhythm guided by the tiny tug you feel when tissue gives and the tug changes. 3 stitches in a straight line. Even bite, even gap. The motion was small enough to be polite. Pike paused mid-motion. Val watched from the back, chin tipped. No one spoke. The monitor chimed a soft count like a patient breathing in sleep. Where did you train? Pike said. Here and there, Rowan said. That is not an answer. It is the one I have. She set the driver down with the tip aligned to the pad's edge. They finished the case without comment. The patient went to recovery. The OR thawed. The smell of cautery eased out of the air. Rowan found the lounge. It was 3 degrees too warm with a couch that sagged in the wrong places. A radio on the shelf hummed low trumpet and snare from a station that liked old records. She poured coffee and tasted burnt paper. Eli Navarro leaned on the doorframe with a soda pressed to his cheek. He had circles under his eyes and a smile that made everything look less sharp. You are the new intern who sewed like a machine, he said. I sewed like a person with a deadline, Rowan said. You from around here? Far enough. He reached for a mug. As he moved, Rowan's hair slipped back from her right ear. A small black chevron sat just behind the angle of her jaw. Eli's gaze touched it, then looked away on purpose. Bold choice, he said. Bad idea, Rowan said. He nodded as if that told him enough. Coffee's a bad idea, too. You get used to it. An hour later, the ER lights made everything look like it had been scrubbed with salt. A 17-year-old girl lay on a gurney with her hair braided tight. She held her mother's hand and did not look at anyone else. Rowan stood in the corner while Pike reviewed scans on a tablet. The air smelled like rain on hot concrete when the doors opened and a gust slipped through. Raj Patel, another intern, whispered near the sink. Ashley muttered back. They thought they were quiet. Rowan heard them anyway. She kept her eyes on the monitor. The beats were clean. The appendectomy had been the easy one. The next case came near midnight. A man in his 50s with right upper quadrant pain and a face that looked accustomed to ignoring it. His chart said gallstones. The ultrasound showed a gallbladder that did not want to be there anymore. The triage nurse had written stable in neat block letters. Rowan read the labs again. White count too high. AST and L tilted up. He shifted and his breath stuck like something caught under the ribs. Where does it go when it moves? Rowan asked. He blinked at the ceiling, back sometimes up into my shoulder. She looked at his hands, dirt under the nails in a way that did not wash off in one night. She could hear the storm chewing on the city. A siren faded down the street. She paged Dr. Pike. He arrived with a jaw that suggested the hour. We are set for Lap Coley at 7. We need a CT, Rowan said. White count is wrong for simple stones. Enzymes are climbing. Pain to the shoulder. I want to rule out a perforated ulcer. The ultrasound is clear, he said. Classic presentation. The presentation is not classic, Rowan said. He looks worse than his picture. You have been here 6 weeks, he said. I have been doing this for 28 years. Then you have seen a case where the picture lied, Rowan said. Silence settled in like another person in the room. The monitor clicked its patient count. Val slipped in behind them to check a tray and did not leave. You do not have the authority to order a CT, Pike said. Give it to me, Rowan said. If I'm wrong, I lose 15 minutes and you do not forget it. If I'm right, we do not miss a hole in his gut. He set his tablet down. He looked at the patient at the door at Rowan. The rain put a steady hiss on the glass. Order it, he said. If it is clean, you wasted our time. Rowan nodded. She walked with the gurney down the hall that smelled like wet copper and disinfectant. Eli pushed from the front boots, squeaking where the floor had been mopped too often. The CT suite was cool and quiet. The tech spoke to the patient in a voice like a blanket. Rowan stood with her arms crossed and watched the numbers on the console. Hold still, the tech said. Breathe. Do not breathe. Good. The machine turned. The timer rolled up. The monitor by the keyboard counted in white digits. 12%. 28. 47. Rowan stared at the center of the display, where the image would bloom into slices she could read faster than she could name them. Her jaw unclenched and set again. Eli watched the numbers too. You do not like waiting, he said. No, Rowan said. He leaned back against the wall. The radio signal from the lounge was a faint pulse in the bones of the building trumpet on the edge of the hearing. The CT hummed like a slow saw. Val stood at the doorway with a file in her hands. Her eyes were on Rowan's face. She did not tap her foot. She did not breathe loud. She was a still thing in a moving place. The timer ticked to 83%. In the glass, Rowan saw her reflection pale and sharp. The black chevron hid under her hair and then showed when she swallowed. She pulled the hair down again without thinking. The timer hit 96. The rain slackened for a breath and then returned. The numbers flipped to 100. The image began to load on the screen. The outline of a stomach, the curve of a duodenum. The tech leaned forward and tapped a key. The CT bloomed across the screen in gray layers. Stomach, then duodenum, then a slim crescent where there should not be one. Air sitting where tissue should keep it out. A halo of fluid tucked beside the curve, like a shadow that did not belong. The tech shifted the mouse. You seeing this? I am, Rowan said. Pike leaned in. The room went smaller around his shoulders. He did not speak for a long moment. The patient lay on the table, staring at the tiles. The monitor at his head counted out a calm rhythm that did not match the new map on the screen. Contained perforation, Rowan said. We go in open and repair. Pike nodded once, prep an OR. They rolled the man back through the corridor. The hall smelled like wet stone and antiseptic. A janitor dragged a yellow mop bucket past, and the wheels squeaked on a seam in the floor. Eli pushed the head of the gurney and kept the tubes neat with his elbows. He did not look at Rowan, but he stayed close enough to pass anything she asked for without asking. In the OR, the lights made everything bright as noon. Val laid instruments on a tray with their tips aligned. Pike scrubbed like someone washing off a long day. His shoulders were set. Rowan stood at his right, eyes on the field, hands ready. When he opened, the smell of cautery rode up into the vents. Rowan clamped and retracted like she had worked that motion into her bones long ago. The edges of the perforation showed as a reddened cuff. Small. Angry. Pike took a breath through his mask. Good call, he said. Rowan said nothing. She passed him a suture. He placed it in a neat, interrupted pattern, and she tied with tension that felt right in her fingers. The monitor kept time for them with a gentle tick. Val watched in silence. Eli stood by the door ready to run if someone needed something that was not in the room. They closed and sent the patient to recovery. The air in the hallway felt cooler when they stepped out. Pike peeled off his cap and looked at Rowan for the length of one breath and then away. Do not mistake a correct call for permission to make the next one on your own, he said. I will not, Rowan said. The clock ticked past midnight. The storm outside ran its fingers through the city. The ER pager on Rowan's hip buzzed. She answered and listened, then she was already moving. Eli fell into step because he knew that walk. Trauma bay lights performed their harsh miracle and made every color too pure. A young man lay on the stretcher with a shredded jacket, a helmet still strapped crooked on his head and his chest moving wrong. The left side rose late. His skin had the bleached look of someone whose body had pulled all the blood into the middle and locked the doors. Breath sounds absent on the left, the paramedic said. He pushed air through the bag and frowned. Pressure is dropping. Pike moved into the room, pulling on gloves. Needle decompression, set up a chest tube. His hands shook on the plastic wrapper. Not much, but enough. 16 hours changes everyone. Rowan picked up a 14-gauge catheter and found the second intercostal space at the mid-clavicular line, with a press that was almost a caress. She did not look at the ceiling. She did not look at anyone. She felt for the path her hands already knew. Stop, Pike said. Rowan pushed. The needle went in clean. A hot hiss of air burst from the chest and the monitor jumped as if glad to be doing a job again. The young man's mouth opened. The ventilator bag finally met less resistance. SpO2 rose, 79, 88, 92. Rowan withdrew the needle and secured the catheter with tape so fast it looked slow. Eli already had the tray for the tube opened like he had known the order before it was spoken. Val stepped in with a drape and a clamp her face a mask of calm. I will place the tube, Pike said. He sounded like someone who had been interrupted mid-sentence. With respect, he will not wait, Rowan said. I am fresh. Maya Brooks appeared in the doorway. She had blood on one cuff and her hair was pulled back tight. She watched the room like a field officer reading a map. Let her do it, Maya said. Pike shifted his weight. His pride moved under his coat like a living thing. He stepped back 2 inches. 2 minutes. Rowan cleaned with iodine. She made a small incision at the 5th intercostal space and spread with a curved clamp until her fingers felt the pop that meant she was home. She guided the tube in. Air and blood slid out in a rush that looked like relief. Eli connected the tube to the drainage box before she asked. The monitor climbed in numbers that made everyone breathe. 1 minute, 40 seconds. Val's mouth moved. Maybe a prayer, maybe a curse. The young man's eyes blinked under the helmet. He was not out of the woods, but he was in a place where a path existed. Pike stripped his gloves and looked at Rowan. The anger had not left his face, but it had made room for something else. He did not ask again where she learned that. He did not have to. They charted. The letters came easy and neat. Maya stood close enough that Rowan could feel the warmth coming off her after a long shift. I was an army nurse before med school, Maya said. She spoke low for Rowan alone, mostly stateside, 1 rotation at Landstuhl. Rowan kept writing. I have seen hands like yours, Maya said. They move like the clock is louder than the rest of the room. Rowan capped the pen. I am a first year. Maya gave one short nod. And I am not asking. They both looked at the young man. His number steadied into a new normal. The storm tapped on the windows like knuckles. Later, the lounge held enough steam and coffee to fog the glass. Eli leaned on the counter and stretched his back. Human event, he said. You saved that guy. The team saved him, Rowan said. She did not smile, but her voice softened. He tapped her mug with his knuckle. You ever sleep? Sometimes when it rains. It always rains here. Not like this. He looked at her, then really looked long enough to notice the tired behind her eyes and the line at the corner of her mouth that did not match her age. He did not ask the question he wanted to ask. He reached into the cabinet for more cups and let the moment pass like a missing step on a staircase you already learned to avoid. Word moved in a hospital even when no one said anything. By the next afternoon, 2 interns who liked to whisper made sure their whispers were heard. Raj listed the details that had turned out right on the ulcer case. Ashley replied that luck could look like skill if you squinted. Val walked past them without turning her head. She had nothing to add. Rowan rounded on the man from the night before. He was awake and unamused by the world, which Rowan took as a good sign. He said his pain was a 4 and he thought the nurses were angels. She nodded and checked his incision and told him the truth, which was that he would feel worse tomorrow and better after that. Outside, the sky went the color of old nickel. Thunder rolled along the river. The intercom clicked and a voice threaded through every floor. Trauma alert. Mass casualty incident inbound. All available surgical staff report to the emergency department now. Repeat, mass casualty inbound. Eli looked up from a chart with his mouth still half open from a joke he had been about to make. He did not finish it. He dropped the chart into the slot and started to run. Maya's steps sounded like a drill instructor in boots on a parade ground. Rowan felt the muscles in her shoulders pull tight in a way that felt like an old shirt slipping into place. She could taste copper on the back of her tongue. She pushed through the doors into the ER, and the space had already changed. The nurses pulled crash carts into lines. The respiratory team snapped on extra tubing. The air smelled like alcohol pads and rain. The administrative clerk at the desk took off her glasses and set them down as if she knew they would be in the way. Maya stood at the center like the stem of a flower with everything else bending around her. Her voice found the room without getting loud. Construction site collapse at Bywater docks. Steel escaped a crane and took a scaffolding with it. 6 critical, 8 more on the way. First ambulance arrives in 2 minutes. Pike came in with his coat over his arm. His eyes were sharp again. He looked at the bed maps and made choices with his fingers. Keene Bay C, Maya said. Low priority until they prove us wrong. Rowan nodded. Val rolled a stand to Bay C and set out a basic tray with 2 sizes of tube, a set of clamps, and what she called her lucky scalpel. She winked without moving her face much. Eli carried in 2 units of O negative and a warm blanket because he knew how shock behaves. The sirens built outside like a choir that had practiced this song too often. Rain ran in sheets down the bay doors and left the concrete looking like a mirror. The first rig turned and backed with precision until the bumper kissed the yellow line. The rear doors flew open and the world beyond was all wet steel and red light. Rowan pulled her gloves on and felt the powder catch on her skin. She looked down at her hands. The scars across the knuckles were pale under the fluorescent light. The black chevron hid where it always did. She took a breath and stepped to the edge of Bay C. The first stretcher slid into Bay C with water dripping from the frame. The paramedic at the head called out over the noise. Male late 20s. Crush injury to abdomen and pelvis. Hypotensive. GCS 14. Blood on the move. Rowan stepped to the rail. The man's face was gray and filmed with sweat. Grease stained the lines of his fingers. His shirt was torn at the hem where a belt had been cut away. Name, Rowan asked. Noah, he whispered. His voice rasped like sand on a drumhead. Noah Briggs. Look at me, Noah. She pressed 2 fingers to the pulse at his neck. Fast and thready. Pain level. Hard, he said. He swallowed. Back, shoulder. Eli opened 2 large bore IVs like he was playing a familiar song. Val hung O negative and cracked the tubing. Rowan ran the fast exam with the probe skating under gel that smelled like fake fruit. Black pools bloomed where there should have been clean gray. Free fluid, Rowan said. He is bleeding. Pike appeared at the curtain with his coat half on. He scanned the monitor, then the bay map, then a list in his head that Rowan could not see. Stabilize and wait, he said, 2 ahead of him for the OR. Rowan glanced at the numbers. Blood pressure slipping to mid-80s, heart rate climbing, skin a shade that made the lips look wrong. He does not have time, she said. Keep him alive until we can take him, Pike said. That is your job. Noah's eyes found Rowan's face. They focused the way you focus through pain by lighting one thing in your head and letting the rest go dark. I know you, he said. The words scratched like they had to be pulled out from behind his teeth. You do not, Rowan said. She pressed his hand. It was cold. Hands like that, he said. He shivered once. Sable sicked. Eli went still. The room did not. The monitor kept its count. Rain knocked on the bay doors. Pike looked from Noah to Rowan and back. Or 2 will be 20 minutes, Pike said. 20 minutes is dead, Rowan said. She heard her voice, and it sounded like something she had put away and was now holding again. I can open here, control the bleed, and move him when a room is free. This is not a field hospital, Pike said. It is a place with walls, Rowan said. He does not care about the address. Maya stepped into the bay and stood beside Pike. She had her mask around her neck and a crease in the corner of her eye that showed up when she was choosing. She watched the numbers and then watched Rowan. Let her work, Maya said. Silence in a crowded room is never empty. It aches with all the things that could happen. Pike set his jaw. He looked at the clock, then at the man on the table, then at Rowan. 3 minutes, he said. If he is not stable, we move anyway. Rowan nodded once. Eli crash cart and laparotomy kit, Val betadine and lap pads, 2 more units on standby. They moved. The cart's wheels squealed at one point on the floor. The iodine smell cut through the rain. Rowan gloved. She did not take the time to gown all the way. She painted the abdomen brown and waited for it to dry just enough. Noah, she said. She kept her voice close to him so the rest of the room could fade. Stay with me. He closed his eyes and opened them. Yes, ma'am. Scalpel. The skin gave and the subcutaneous fat parted with a tired sigh. Rowan spread with a retractor and felt the heat rise out of the body like a living thing trying to leave. Blood pooled fast. She packed with lap pads and followed the river back to the spring, iliac fossa. She teased the bowel aside with fingers that did not argue. There it was, a bright flower that pulsed wrong. Clamp, she said. Val placed metal in her hand with a soft click. Rowan slid the jaws in and closed with a pressure she could feel through glove and tissue as a small change in resistance. The rush slowed. The pool stopped deepening. The numbers bumped up like a chest finding a breath it had lost. Second clamp, Rowan said. She checked for other sources, none that wanted to show themselves. She packed. Eli squeezed the blood warmer bag like it was a bellows. BP is 78/46, Eli said, climbing. Rowan breathed once and stepped back a half step. He is stable enough to move. Go, Pike said. He pushed the gurney and did not look at Rowan as they rolled for the elevator. Maya followed. Val walked backward and kept the lines from catching on anything that would turn success into a lesson. In OR2, the air was colder. The overhead lights were clean as a polished blade. They transferred Noah with the count that nurses use when everything hurts. An attending with a clipped beard took position and looked at Rowan's field with respect that was not yet trust. Bleeder restarted, the anesthesiologist said. The voice came through the mask like a different person, pressure dropping. The attending reached for a clamp and hesitated when the vessel retracted behind a fold of bowel. Going blind in that pocket can turn one hole into 6. Rowan felt for the path in her head. DeBakey and a vascular tie, she said. I can see it. The attending looked at Pike. Pike did not speak. He only moved his eyes once toward Maya. Maya did not blink. Val placed a DeBakey clamp in Rowan's palm. It settled like a tool she had carried for years. She slid her left hand under the bowel and lifted enough to change the angle. There. A slick line that ran toward the wrong future. She took it and closed the clamp with one clean click. The field brightened. The anesthesiologist called numbers that sounded like a promise kept. 70, then 80, then 84. Rowan tied it off and checked again. Quiet. No more welling where welling should not be. The attending took over and began to close. His voice was tight and grateful. Thank you, he said. Rowan stripped off her gloves and left the room before anyone asked her to explain. The hallway had a hum like an old refrigerator. On the far wall hung a print of a bayou with moss and still water. Rowan stared at it until the green in the picture felt loud. Pike caught up to her near the scrub sinks. His shoes squeaked once and then found silence. My office, he said. She followed. The office held framed certificates and the photo of a smiling family at a park. Rain ran down the window in threads that curved when the wind asked them to. Sit, he said. I will stand, Rowan said. He leaned against the desk and folded his arms. He looked tired in a way that a nap could not fix. You are not a first year, he said. Not in the way that word means to my program. Rowan said nothing. The air tasted like paper and coffee. Where did you learn to move like that? He asked. On days when it mattered, Rowan said. That is not a place, he said. It is the only map I'm offering, Rowan said. He tapped his finger on the wood. He looked at the chevron under her hair. It was only visible when her head tilted a certain way. He found it anyway. You were in the army, he said. Rowan did not answer. He did not need her to. Why leave, he asked. Rowan watched the rain. A flash lit the glass. She saw her own face, and for a breath it looked like someone else. Sankin, she said. 2022. We pulled 3 Marines out after contact. I did everything right. We called evac. The helicopter was supposed to be 14 minutes. It took 28. I watched numbers slide and I could not change them. Wind and orders and rank made the choice. I did not. Pike did not move. The room had that feeling you get just before a thunderclap. He opened his mouth and closed it. He rubbed a thumb across a knuckle as if it hurt. You came here for clean floors and rules you could trust, he said. I came here to have a clock I could read, Rowan said. He nodded once. It was a small nod, not agreement, not surrender, something more human than either. Before anything else, a rapid knock cut through the space. Maya opened the door without waiting for a reply. Her eyes were sharp again. Gas line explosion at the same site, she said. 1 critical inbound, fragment embedded left of sternum. Cardio is tied up for 90 minutes. Pike straightened. We stabilize and wait. Waiting is a choice, Maya said. She looked at Rowan. Rowan felt the shape of a metal shard under skin without seeing it. She could smell hot iron and carbon and the sharp scent of singed fabric. The memory put her back in a place with dust in the teeth and a sky that never closed its eyes. Prep Bay A, Rowan said. Local block and light sedation, 2-0 proline, suction, crash cart ready. Pike stared at her. The muscle in his jaw twitched and then went quiet. Rowan, he said. She met his eyes and did not look away. He does not have 90 minutes. The siren reached the doors and cut off. The room made a path. Eli rolled the tray past them at a run and did not spill a thing. Val followed with a small metal basin and a pack of gauze. Rain hissed on the roof in a steady line of sound. The bay doors opened and brought in wet air and a man with a piece of metal sitting under his skin like a lie. Rowan pulled on gloves and stepped into the light. Bay A filled with the clean light that makes skin look made of paper. The patient was mid-30s, work vest half cut, away breath coming short. A shard of metal sat under his skin just left of the sternum. The edges around it were bruised and wet. You could feel heat rising from the wound as if the metal still remembered the fire. Name, Rowan asked. My both asked. Ty, he said, lips dry, eyes too bright, hurts to breathe. It will stop hurting, Rowan said. You will feel pressure. You will stay very still. Maya stood near the head of the bed and watched the monitor. Eli set the tray where Rowan's left hand would land without looking. Val cracked open a sterile pack, and the smell of iodine cut through the room. Local block, Rowan said. She infiltrated lidocaine around the fragments, slow and even. Ty flinched once and then went quiet. His chest rose shallow and regular. The rain on the roof softened from a roar to a constant brush. Ready, Eli said. His voice came out quiet without him meaning it to. Rowan set the tips of the forceps along the angle of the fragment. The surface was slick with blood and road grit. She matched her breath to the count of the monitor. In. Out. She felt the way the shard had slotted between rib and cartilage. She had felt that geometry before in places that did not smell like disinfectant. Stay with me, Ty, she said, eyes on the clock. Ty stared at the second hand and did not blink. Rowan did not lift. She pressed down a breath, then eased back. The fragment loosened with a cough of dark blood that did not spray. No arterial fountain, no new panic. She pinched with gentle pressure and drew the metal out along the path it had taken in. It came free with a sound that was more felt than heard, like a nail leaving old wood. Blood welled, not fast. She packed gauze and watched the numbers. Heart rate stayed high but regular. Blood pressure held. He took a longer breath and the skin between his ribs did not pull as tight. Val dropped the shard in a basin. It rang once. The sound climbed up into the vents and faded. Eli handed Rowan a suture. She closed the wound with 4 sets of bites that looked like a neat zipper. When she finished, the room remembered how to breathe. Pike had been at the far edge of the bay the whole time. Now he stepped in. His jaw was set hard enough to show the muscle move. He looked from the incision to the basin. He put one finger near the wound and did not touch it. How did you know the angle, he asked. It did not sound like a question he expected her to answer. Rowan stripped off her gloves. The latex snapped and she dropped them in the bin. She stood straight. The chevron behind her ear showed when she lifted her chin. Major Rowan Keene, she said. United States Army Medical Corps, Special Mission Unit, call sign Sable 6. The ER went quiet in a way that let every small sound rise. The ventilator sighed. A cartwheel clicked as it turned over the same crack in the floor. Rain tapped on the glass. Eli stared at Rowan like he was seeing an answer and a new question at the same time. Maya did not look surprised. She is telling you the truth, Maya said. The public pieces of her record are enough. Pike did not move. He took a breath that started to speak and stopped. Then he nodded once, and that was the only thing he allowed himself. Ty whispered thank you. Rowan touched his shoulder and stepped away so the nurses could finish the work that keeps people alive after the moment passes. By morning, the story had traveled through halls and elevators and the cafeteria line. It showed up in places where people folded scrubs and stocked gloves. It arrived in a boardroom with carpet so thick it made footsteps quiet. That was where Dr. Louise March sat behind a wide desk with a single pen aligned to the blotter. Dr. Keene, she said. Dr. Pike, Dr. Brooks. They sat. The room smelled faintly of lemon oil and filtered air. Rain on the windows showed in blurred lines against the view of the river. The city looked like a watercolor. I have reviewed your application and your file, March said, the parts that exist on paper. Rowan folded her hands in her lap and kept them still. Her knuckles were pale. She watched March's face and not the wall art. You performed procedures outside the typical scope of a first-year, March said. This creates risk for the hospital. I made the choices that kept people alive, Rowan said. March did not smile. She did not frown. She looked down at a single sheet and then back up. Our legal team and the medical board have reviewed the events of the last week, she said. Given the outcomes and given new information regarding your prior experience, we will not pursue disciplinary action. Pike closed his eyes for the length of one blink. Maya's shoulders settled a fraction. March placed a second sheet on the desk. Keeping you in a first-year slot is not reasonable. It does not reflect your capability, and it does not serve our patients. Pike leaned forward. I recommend a senior attending position in trauma, full privileges, autonomy over cases, build a training program for high-acuity scenarios. Rowan looked from Pike to March. On what terms? You design it, March said. You answer for it. Residents participate by choice. The goal is to improve survival, not to make headlines. Pike turned in his chair to face Rowan. The hard parts of him had shifted since the night in Bay C. His voice did not have as many corners. I put my pride where your work should have gone, he said. I am correcting that. Rowan felt the words land and then pass through. They did not stick to anything, not yet. I will consider it, she said. March nodded. Take the time you need. Do not take too much. The meeting ended. The hallway outside felt empty in a way that had nothing to do with people. Rowan walked without deciding where she was going. Her feet took her to the chapel. The room was a small square of wood and quiet. A cross hung above a bench. The window threw colored light on the floor that moved when clouds crossed the sun. She sat. The air smelled like old wax and dust that no one chased anymore. The quiet pressed on her ears until she heard her own breath. She closed her eyes and the image showed up the way it always did. Dust in the air. A man's hand going slack on a stretcher. Numbers falling like a staircase with one fewer step than she needed. The door opened and someone came in and then stopped. The footfalls were careful. Maya sat down beside her. I looked up the Sankin incident, Maya said, the part that is not buried. Rowan did not open her eyes. The helicopter that should have been 14 minutes was redirected, Maya said. They pulled a political asset out first. Your evac came second. Rowan's hands tightened on the edge of the bench until the wood groaned. She let go and the wood sprang back into shape. It does not change what you saw, Maya said. It changes where the blame sits. Rowan opened her eyes. The colored light moved across Maya's face and made a map she could not read. They sat until the patch of blue slid from the wall to the floor and then to the toe of Rowan's shoe. Thank you, Rowan said. Maya stood. You do not owe me anything. She left. Rowan stayed with the wax smell and the quiet and the click of the building settling in its bones. When she stepped back into the corridor, Eli was there with a stack of trays for the sim lab. His hair was damp and he smelled like rain. You all right? He asked. Rowan nodded. I am. He looked like he wanted to say something larger and then chose something smaller. Cafeteria has red beans. Do not eat the cornbread. A phone buzzed in Rowan's pocket. A number she did not know. The message that followed contained a header from a federal agency and a request to discuss training for disaster response. Rowan read it once and then put the phone away without answering. Back in the ER, Ty slept under a warm blanket with his face turned toward the wall. Noah lay in recovery with a line of tape across his abdomen and a pulse that made sense. The air felt almost clean. Pike found Rowan near the supply room. He carried a folder, and he did not pretend it was not important. You are needed, he said. Here. Rowan looked through the small window into Bay C. A nurse adjusted a monitor and laughed at something someone said. The laugh drifted out to the hall and made the place sound more like people than machines. Rowan touched her hair behind her right ear. The chevron was there. It always would be. She nodded. Pike handed her the folder. The paper inside felt heavy. Rain tapped the small square of glass in the door. The sound timed itself to her breath for a few beats before falling out of sync again. The intercom clicked once in the ceiling and then went quiet. A cart rolled past. The wheels found that same crack in the floor. The small jump felt familiar under Rowan's shoes. She tucked the folder under her arm. She walked toward the light. Rowan stood in March's office with the folder under her arm. The river through the window looked like a strip of gray silk pulled tight. Pike waited with his hands light on the back of a chair. Maya watched from the corner where the light fell across the edge of her sleeve. I will take the position, Rowan said. 3 conditions. March sat forward. Name them. First, I designed the training without committee delays. Rowan placed the folder on the desk and aligned it with the blotter. Second, residents opt in. No one is pushed into methods they do not want. Third, I want Noah Briggs involved. He knows what this looks like from the table. March did not look at Pike before she answered. Agreed. Pike added a small nod. You will have what you need. The signature took one stroke for each name. Paper slid back into the folder. That was the sound the new thing made when it became real. The simulation lab used to be a room with dust in the corners. Now it breathed. Lights flushed from white to red when a scenario began. Warmers hummed. Monitors beat like metronomes. The mannequins had skin that took a needle and moved when air went in. The floor tape marked zones where bodies and carts and hands would live. Rowan stood at the head of a mock gurney and spoke without raising her voice. 28-year-old male. Blunt trauma. GCS 6. Systolic 70. You have 6 minutes before he is not yours anymore. She picked up a laryngoscope and showed the angle with the blade as the monitor ticked. The interns watched and then moved. Leah said in airway. Marcus dropped 2 lines. A second year called out a fast result with her eyes on the screen and her hand steady. Rowan corrected a wrist and a shoulder and a way of standing that would waste a second later. Hands move while the brain finishes the sentence she said. Say what you see. Do the next right thing. Val walked through the row like a coach who knows exactly what a mistake will cost. Closer with that bite. Feel the shelf, there. Eli stood by the timer and hit the switch without mercy. He knew when to step in and when to be the wall they needed to push against. Noah came in with a notebook and a presence that quieted other noise. He watched a resident freeze and walked to the foot of the bed. You are looking at the wrong thing, he told the resident. He did not raise his voice. Look at his mouth. He is pulling. He cannot breathe. Fix that, and the rest is possible. The resident moved again. The mannequin's chest rose. The monitor settled into a rhythm that felt human. Between drills, Rowan wrote on a whiteboard. Survival at St. Gabriel had been 68% for the worst cases. She wrote 73 and circled it. She wrote 76 and underlined it. After 4 months, she wrote 79 and stopped writing. No one spoke. The number sat on the board and pulled the room into a new shape. Word got out. An email with a federal header asked for a call. Then another. Rowan took one on her lunch break while the sim lab cooled down. The voice on the line talked about funding and teams and rollouts and travel. Rowan listened with the phone pressed to her ear and watched a drip of water trace a crack down the wall where a painter had missed a spot. I can consult, she said. My work stays here. They accepted that. She hung up and stood very still until she could hear the building again. In the ER, life kept doing the ordinary impossible. A toddler with a coin in his throat. A tourist with a migraine that looked like a stroke until it did not. A man who had been sick alone for too long and finally told the truth to a nurse who cared enough to stand there and take it. Rowan moved through it with her sleeves pushed up and her hair caught at the nape of her neck. The chevron behind her ear showed when she turned her head. Sometimes Eli saw it and said nothing. Sometimes Val saw it and smiled without showing teeth. Pike stopped by the lab one afternoon with a clipboard and 2 cups of coffee. He stood at the back and watched Leah lead a drill. When the scenario ended, he handed Rowan a cup. You made this room mean something, he said. Rowan took a sip. The coffee was not good. It was hot. We did. He looked at the whiteboard. You have a number in your head. I have a patient in my head, Rowan said. He nodded. That was enough. Evening pulled rain back over the city. The smell of wet stone came through the vents. Rowan walked the corridor and stopped at the recovery room window. Noah slept with his mouth open and a line of drool on the pillow. The tape on his abdomen looked like a road laid straight. He woke just enough to see her. He fumbled in the drawer and pulled out a photo. A woman with 2 small girls at a park. Sunlight on a plastic slide. Faces wide open. My youngest turned 3, he said. I was there. Rowan held the photo until the slick paper warmed against her fingers. She gave it back to him because some things belong where they were taken from. The intercom clicked. The sound of it settled in her bones in a familiar way. Trauma alert, multi-vehicle collision on I-10, all available staff to the emergency department. Eli came up beside her with a bag of gloves. Here we go. Rowan tied her hair back. They walked fast enough to make the air fold around them. The ER opened and took them in. Sirens climbed and fell outside the doors as the rigs turned into the bay. The first patient was a young woman with blood in her hair and a pulse too fast for her small wrist. Rowan listened for breath sounds and found one where there should be two. Needle, she said. Eli had it ready. The hiss was a small relief in a loud room. The second was an older man who smelled like brake fluid and fear. Pupils uneven, words broken. Rowan put a hand on his shoulder and he grabbed her wrist. She leaned in close enough for him to smell the soap on her skin. You are all right, she said. Keep your eyes on me. Val threaded a line around a door hinge without breaking stride. Maya adjusted bed assignments with the tip of a pen like someone guiding ships at a crowded dock. Pike spoke to a family in the corner where the light was softer. The work took all the seconds, and then asked for a few more. Rowan felt the touch of each tool as if it had a memory in it. She called for a chest tube, and the tray was already open. She called for blood, and the unit was already primed. The team moved like a song learned by ear. Hours later, the room thinned. The overhead settled back to ordinary bright. A janitor mopped slow arcs under the chairs. The last monitor in Bay B kept time with a sleepy regularity. Rowan scrubbed at the sink until the water ran clear. Steam curled up past her face and fogged the edge of the mirror. She looked at herself the way you look at a person you have been walking beside in the dark and have just now seen under a streetlight. The scar at her jaw, the small black chevron, eyes that did not look away. Maya joined her and set a chart on the counter. You good? She asked. Rowan nodded, yes. They stood in a silence that felt like a chair put back where it belongs. Maya left. Rowan dried her hands and stepped into the corridor. Through the glass, the sky over the river was pale. The city sounded like tires on wet streets and a train horn somewhere far off. Rowan walked toward the doors. They slid open with a breath of cooler air. She stopped for a second under the awning and listened. The building clicked as it settled. The rain had eased. Eli called from behind her. Keen. Red beans today were not bad. She turned and shook her head. You said never eat the cornbread. Still true. He grinned and kept walking. Rowan watched him go. She let the air move across her face and fill her lungs like a first step. She went back inside. The lights found her shoulders. The hall took her weight and gave it back. The day started again in a place that had not slept at all. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.